Because sometimes casting directors they'll make you their wild card, I love being
best.
Love being a wild card, baby, because then you get to do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Because like you definitely don't fit the role anyway, so it's like really, really have fun with it. Not like go crazy and like over the top, but like you get to absolutely do it your own way.
Welcome to Get Scene Unscripted. I'm your host, Jesse Malinowski. We are going to dive into acting insights, meet industry pros, and master the business. Don't forget to subscribe and share. We're keeping you behind the scenes and ahead of the game. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to Get Scene Unscripted. If this is your first time, welcome. And if you're coming back, thanks for tuning back, everyone. And I'm excited for today, talking with a great actor friend of mine. But before I introduce you, we looked at the statistics and more than half of our viewers are not subscribed. Shame! Shame! Hit the subscribe button right now as we are diving in with our guest, Mr. Chris Mayers.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm doing well. You made me a cappuccino, and it is delicious. So thank you.
I did, everyone. Sugar-free, good to go.
Yeah.
So it's healthy.
Yeah, it's healthy. Yeah.
I think so, right?
No, it's great. I feel jazzed and ready to go. I feel healthier than I was this morning. So thank you.
Good. Chris, I was thinking about this when you were on your way over here. I was like, you know what? And this is not bullshit.
Oh, this is not bullshit, America.
Nope. I do not miss in-person auditions. But when I think about in-person auditions, I feel like I always ran into you, and it was always such a pleasure.
Oh,
so
thanks.
if I do miss in-person auditions, it's because I miss you.
Oh, stop it, Jesse.
Seriously.
I will say I miss you too, first of all.
Oh,
Jesse,
thanks.
I miss you. But I will say, I think initial auditions that are in person, I don't necessarily miss them because that, it's like a sea of people that look exactly the same as you. And you're like, oh, we all shopped at the blue shirt store. And, but callbacks in person, I do miss. Like I had a callback last week for something and it's like, it's over Zoom and, you get the comfort of your own home and you get to, whatever. That's all good. But it's just
you have such a good setup.
Oh, stop it.
You do.
Stop.
Like, so I feel like you have to feel similar to me. That like when I see other people in the Zoom room, I'm like, I'm going to crush you.
No, here's the thing. I don't think that. I don't think I'm gonna crush you. But
I'm thinking.
I have had someone say that to me literally out loud. This was like years ago.
I'm gonna crush you?
Yeah. Well, he moved to LA like years ago. But I remember I ran into him once, and like he's like a big guy, and different, ethnicity. So we're not the same type, right? And he comes up to me once and he said, this is during a callback. So we were reading for two different roles. And he looks at me and he goes, you're lucky you're not my type because I would crush you. And I was like, whoa, dude. Cool, man.
And then he just left.
Wow. I hope he's doing well, Hope he's crushing it.
He does not hope you're doing well.
Oh, no. He hopes I'm dead.
Yeah.
But
yeah. you miss in-person callbacks.
I miss the in-person callback because like in a Zoom callback, sometimes they're very kind and they'll leave their videos on and you get to like connect with them and sort of see how they're reacting to something, especially if it's like comedy, like comedy depends so much on like, hey, do you think this is funny? Or like, am I connecting with the material in the way that you were hoping I would? And to have no feedback on that is like real hard sometimes. And like the one I did last week, it was like, sometimes with a callback, you'll have like the casting director and the director, and then like, maybe the writer and a couple producers or whatever. This had like 15 people on it.
Oh, wow.
All screens off. And so it was just a sea of black squares that I was like talking to. And I was like, and it was, again, supposed to be funny. And I was like, I hope you like this because I'm shouting into the void, And so I miss the in-person part of just like connecting with real people, and getting that sort of instant feedback of like, how's it going? Because even if it's going bad, at least I know, But
well, you know what I do? I was able to, I think, I guess I'll call it a skill, develop this skill during 2020, during COVID. Mm-hmm. I was doing hosting stuff.
Yeah.
And prior to 2020, obviously it's all in person.
Yeah.
Well, these big events were going to all go under, these businesses, if they didn't continue doing their business model of doing events. So they moved online. So then I had to do it online as well. And so it was like, yeah, how do you like land these jokes, not hear the laughter, all this. So I literally just started like making it up in my head.
You
like,
have the laugh track in your head.
I'm just like,
that.
I crushed like that one hit. That one hit. So I kind of just do the same.
It's great.
Like the Zoom boxes are black, and I'm like, nailed it.
Yeah.
But you just have to, you just got to make that choice.
Oh yeah. I mean, the confidence of it is like what's so important, of course. Like, you know, we say fake it till you make it, but like that is true. Like if you come into a situation, no matter what it is, whether it's acting or just life in general, like, ooh, this is going to be awkward or I'm going to feel uncomfortable. Guess what? It's going to be awkward and you're going to feel uncomfortable. But if you go in thinking like this could be awkward or this could be uncomfortable, but I am going to fake that I am confident. Then you sort of just become confident. Like, I think that that's do you think this is a skill that, you know, I've been learning and growing in over the years? Because like constantly we hear this imposter syndrome voice in our head saying like, you're not good enough or you don't belong here or like whatever, right? But to be able to like tell that voice like, hey, I hear you and I see you, but why don't you just be quiet for a little bit and I'm going to fake it till I feel confident. Like it's the same with like, you know, whatever they say, like you fake happiness until you actually feel happy, right? It's like if you just like walk around just smiling, you like feel really stupid. But it works.
All of a sudden, you're like,
actually, I do feel better. You know, I know you talk a lot about mindset, but I do think that a lot of the time, our emotions are things that we will feel, right? We don't have control necessarily over our instant emotional reaction to something, but then we get to choose what we do with it, right? So if something makes me angry, that's okay. You felt anger.
Exactly.
But then what do I do with that anger? I take a second, I take a breath, and I say, hey, maybe I don't yell or curse or whatever, or react in a way that's going to hurt someone else, right? If you're by yourself and you're in your own house and you just want to let out a yell, sure, whatever. But, or if it's joy or jealousy, or it's often the negative ones we have a hard time sort of dealing with, right?
We're never like upset. I was just so jubilant.
I was just so happy and I didn't know what to do with it. But yeah, it's, you feel those emotions and then what do you do with them, you know? And learning that art of saying like, hey, we can trick our brains a little bit, you know what I mean? Because our brains are so stupid. Our brains are the worst. They will lie to us every single day. My brain is lying to me right now. I was driving here and I was like, I'm nervous. Why did he invite me to do this? Like, I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be here. Because my brain has a Southern accent. And, you know, I'm like, it lies to us all the time. And for us to be able to say, hey, I see you and I hear you, but I'm going to ignore you. You know what I mean? And to be able to say like, but I'm going to walk into whatever room, whether, again, if that's acting or if like I'm just going to a friend's house, right, to like hang out. Sometimes I get nervous, right? You gave me some really good advice once. It might have been 2020 because I think it was a Get Scene like online thing. And I was talking about sometimes I feel social anxiety before I go to something. And I do graphic design as well. Like I work as a graphic designer and I love it. I love doing design work. And you mentioned like, hey, how do you feel after you do a good piece of design? You may not even remember this, but you were like, how do you feel after you've designed something that you're like, nailed it? And I mentioned that like sometimes when I make a really good creative piece, whether that's visual or whatever, you go back and you look at it and you're like, yeah, that was like, I like, that was good, right? Like sometimes like if I really like a creative piece, sometimes I'll go like, not in like a cocky way or anything, but you'll go back and look at it and be like, man, that actually turned out really well. I was nervous it wouldn't work out, but it did. And look at what I made. And you were like, that feeling, like what if you just walk into a situation with that feeling of like, hey, I was nervous that it wasn't going to work out and now it did. And I can look back later and say, oh, it worked. What if that's the same with you walking into any like social situation, walking in thinking like that's the confidence of like, I'm nervous it might not work, but later I can look back and see that it worked, right? So that was a little convoluted, but you said it much more succinctly than that gibberish I just said. But it was really helpful to be like, yeah, because we all have confidence in different areas, you know? It's like, if you work as a mechanic or an accountant or an engineer or whatever, like if you're an expert in your field, you have a confidence in your field that like I wouldn't have. You know, if someone pulled up their car to my driveway and was like, "Hey, could you fix this?" I would go, "No, I cannot."
Nope.
I don't even.
I'll tell you what I'm confident in, not being able to do that.
I remember one time in college, I had a friend from New Jersey who came up to my room and was like, "Hey, Chris, can you help me with something?" I was like, "Yeah, what's going on?" She's like, "Can you help me get gas?" And I was like, "What? Yeah, what's going on?" And she's like, I've never done it." I was like, "But how long have you been driving for?" She's like, like years. And I was like, "You've never filled your own gas?" She's like, "Yeah, it's illegal to do that in New Jersey," which I did not know.
Yeah,
it is. Illegal for you to pump your own gas. And so I remember thinking like, "Oh my gosh, absolutely. I am there for you." But I was like, it's funny to think something so simple is something she didn't have confidence in. You know what I mean? And we're not confident in something until we do it, right? Because that's where the nerves come. You're like, "I've never done this before."
Yep.
Now that I've done it, I know I can do it, you know, and you've proven to yourself you can.
Yeah, dude. Well, thanks. I mean, I appreciate you sharing that story. I do remember that, actually. I needed to hear more of the story before I was like fully on board. But yeah, I mean, it's just the fact that every single one of us have been confident at some point.
Yeah.
Even those of you that are like, "Not me, I've never been confident." There is definitely a moment in time. Maybe you were a kid and you put on the towel and all of a sudden you were a superhero for a moment and you jumped off the couch and in your imagination you flew and you're like, "I felt so confident jumping off that couch." Like there was a moment, I promise. Every single one of us has accomplished things in our life. And if just like I had shared with you, if we can start there from that moment, we're always going to be better off.
Yeah.
And you have that ability.
Yeah.
And another thing, because you're talking about that voice in your head too. And it's funny, you're like, the brain is so stupid. And the brain is also like so powerful at the exact same time. Because you literally can visualize. And if you do these visualization techniques, it's crazy how well they work. But you can literally turn, like if you imagine the voice, right? That's like, "What are you doing, Chris? Why are you here? You shouldn't be here," right?
Cool. Give it a Southern accent now.
That's right. "Chris, what do you think you're doing here? Chris, you shouldn't be here."
Yeah, there it is.
All right. Literally hear the voice and imagine a volume and turn it up. Now, what's interesting here is you turn it up first because that's easy because you can already hear the voice.
Oh, yeah.
But all of a sudden you trick your mind because when you turn it up, that means you also can turn it down. And then literally you can imagine yourself turning it down, and it's wild how it can work. And so you can also do a similar exercise where you're like, "Well, if I was going to say something nice, what might I say?" And that might just be a whisper. But same thing, we can do the exact same technique and turn that up. And make that one louder than the southern bitch that's talking to you.
You hear that, brain?
Yeah.
It's really funny. Yeah, no, that's great though. I love that in the sense of it's kind of like you can kind of control. This is gonna sound a little woo woo, but it's like you can technically control like how fast your heart beats. You know what I mean? Like you can't like shut it off, but you could like make it go faster. Or if you like take a breath and really concentrate on it, you can like slow it down a little bit.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
It's the same thing, like telling your brain like, "Hey, you don't own me."
Yeah.
I named you. You know what I mean? Like you didn't name yourself. Well, you kind of did, but the ability to show your brain that like, "Hey, I can turn you up, but I can also turn you down. So calm down, buddy." You know?
That's right. That's right. Well, I feel like a lot of, I mean, correct me. I don't know your life.
Oh, no worries.
But I was going to say, I feel like a lot of your confidence has come from you doing so much of your improv and sketch stuff that you do. If you guys haven't noticed already, by as many voices and characters he's already been, you do a lot of improv sketch.
Sure.
I feel like that's how we met, right? I mean,
That's
or it's
such a
just
good
maybe an
question.
audition room. I don't know.
It was definitely at Get Scene.
Yeah.
But I don't remember if I like took a class or if it was when there was an improv comedy studio called
Anyway,
Highwire.
you were always one of my favorites by a long shot. So can you maybe share like a memorable experience or something that
Sure.
maybe gave you like, because there's moments I think that give you confidence, right?
Yeah.
Is there a moment that comes to mind?
For sure. Well, I would say improv and sketch comedy and any sort of stage work like period, I think is really valuable for us as actors. Like the ability to be in front of an audience and stand there and say like, I deserve to be on this stage, but it's not necessarily in like an arrogant way. It's like, hey, I have art to share. And we're going to make it together with the audience. I think is like, oh, it's like the best. But I was thinking about this. Do you remember when we did a roast of Tony DeMille? Do you remember this?
Oh man,
this was 2018 maybe. Tony DeMille, Get Scene extraordinaire. Tony DeMille decided for his birthday he wanted to do a roast of himself, which I love that for him.
Yeah. Hold on, I remember when this happened.
Yeah,
Tony. I was like, I don't know. Tony, I don't know if Tony's going to be able to take it. I was very worried for Tony.
Sure.
I was very worried.
Took it like a champ.
He did.
But the thing is, he invited me and then like some other improvisers and stand-up comedians to be on this like panel roasting him and each other. Thing is, I don't really like roasts. I don't like, generally speaking, comedy that like makes fun of each other, you know, or is like mean towards each other.
Right.
My favorite show in the world is Parks and Recreation. Check it out. Very like, what a wonderful, positive comedy show, right? Or The Good Place. I just like Michael Schur. Michael Schur, if you're listening, I love you. And anyway, so he invited me to be part of this roast. And so the jokes I wrote, I didn't want to write mean jokes because I don't like enjoy that. So I wrote a bunch of like dad jokes. I don't know if you remember this. They were all like positive dad jokes. I mean, basically.
This is on par for who you are.
Oh, so, yeah. Sure. It was like dumb jokes of like, you know, like Tony. Oh, Tony, we're really proud of him. He signed up for a 401k this year, which is great, but I don't think he can run that far. And it's like stupid jokes, right? And it's funny because I record, like you recorded the whole thing. And so it's funny watching it back because when it starts, like crickets, like groaning and crickets when I start telling terrible jokes. But by the end, the audience is like super into it.
Yeah.
And I remember it was a moment where like looking back on it, I'm glad in the moment I was able to do this, but like the ability to stand there and say like, I'm aware that you are currently not finding this funny, but I'm going to stand here with a confidence as if it were. And then, because if I had taken that and been like, oh, you guys don't find this funny, well, I'm bad, you know, then like,
get out of here.
It would have gone south real bad. But like, I remember standing there and just being like, I don't care if you laugh at this, actually. And I think it really worked for that bit, you know, that by the end, the audience was very into these like funny, positive, whatever jokes. I think there's something to be said for really standing in your sort of power on stage, you know? And like you were saying, that idea of like, for you, the Zoom, like hearing that laugh track in your head, I'm like, I nailed it. But the ability to say like, you know what? I think what I'm doing is worth your time and I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah,
it's really valuable.
If you're an actor wanting to improve your auditions, I have great news because our Improve Your Audition Bootcamp is coming up. This is one of my favorite challenges that we do, or boot camps that we put together of the entire year, because it focuses on what our job is as actors, which is improve your audition. So if you're wanting specific strategies to make your audition stand out, to know what to do to kind of have those self-tape hacks to make self-taping more fun, easier, and make your auditions more engaging, then you're going to want to show up to this boot camp. It's an incredible deal because it's 2 weeks long, only $37. And don't let me forget to tell you that we also bring in some of the top casting directors of the Southeast to help teach this and go over it. So we're going to be working on different things every single class, and then actors will be selected at random to do either a live Zoom or self-tape. Everyone will get the homework so we all can implement these different strategies and tactics so you are learning and growing in this boot camp to actually improve your audition. And then who knows, maybe you even get selected to help us run that class with that big casting director. So I hope to see you there. Again, it's only $37, but by the way, if you look in the description, there might be a promo code there. So use that promo code now, grab your spot, and I can't wait to see you at our Improve Your Audition Bootcamp. I was just about to say exactly what you did that day. You just got to do it in the Zoom room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, you've done obviously more than just improv and sketch stuff, even though you do a lot of that, and
Sure.
I love seeing you on stage. You're so good, you're so funny, but you've also have a really great film and TV resume with shows like Atlanta, Ozark, Will Trent. Can you talk about, I guess, your process in auditioning for those types of shows
Sure.
and then ultimately booking them? And
Sure.
go
Yeah.
through that?
And kind of going off of improv, I think, if I may say real quick, one thing I love about improv, and I highly recommend to just literally anyone in the world if they are interested, but especially for actors, is improv is a place to, in a very safe way, fail. Because as adults, we very rarely get a chance to like fail without major consequences, or at least it feels like there'll be major
Yes.
consequences if I fail, even if there won't be. But improv is like, you like cheer failure in improv. Like when something
Right.
goes wrong, wrong, quote unquote, the ability to then like justify it or save it or just bail on it, like whatever. That's also funny, you know? And so I don't know. I've loved every improv show I've ever done, even when they don't go well. I think you learn a lot from making choices that aren't always right. And sometimes that's the best stuff, is when you don't make the right choice, because how do you find your way out of this? Or like, oh, we just found something new. Let's explore this because this is very fun and funny. And I find that happens with film and television work, especially where it's like, you know, when you first get the script and you're looking at it, I think a lot of time we have a sense of like, well, this is probably what they want. You know, this is probably what they're going for. And like sometimes that idea can work, you know, if you have like a one line like barista, like, here's your coffee, sir. Like, you know, you don't want to leave like a huge impression, maybe, is that you just have a job to do, right? And then you got to go on to the next thing. So don't make a huge meal of that. But I think about like, I've played 2 different drug dealers in shows before.
Definitely drug dealer,
yeah,
Chris,
right?
but-
Like, come on. You know, I sell the drugs. And but I was on Ozark and Will Trent. I played these like kind of down and dirty drug dealers. And
His range,
stop it.
everyone.
but I was just as surprised as anyone that I booked those roles. But those were really fun auditions. It's funny with both of those auditions, how, I don't want to say little work I put in, but how much it was like, ooh, I'm not the usual type for this, so I'm going to have fun with this, and I'm just going to throw it on camera and then just like, you know, chuck it into the ether like we do with self-tapes, and then you hear back, you're like, wow, cool, that one.
Yeah.
It happens all the time, right? The one you like think about the least is
Dude,
like
yeah.
the one
Yep.
you were most free in, right?
Yes.
And it's that ability to say to yourself, like, hey, there's no right choice, first of all. And even if you make a choice that is unique to you, that's like gold, baby. The choice that is you, oh my gosh. They don't, because here, casting directors are going to see 1,000 tapes for any given role, depending on how big it is. And they'll see 80, 90% that are almost exactly the same,
Yeah.
right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that's bad. Like that can still be, that can be a great tape and you're a great actor. But it's the ones where it's like, ooh, that person brought more of themselves to this role is so interesting. Oh, they stumbled over a word, or like, oh, like, ooh, hey, they're giving you the coffee, but then they're like looking over there because their manager called them over, right? Like some weird tiny little thing where you're like, oh, they made that real and they made a choice, and like, you know, maybe it wasn't right in the sense of what they were originally envisioning, but it was something they made. And I remember both of those drug dealer auditions very fun, because I was like, oh, I'm not going to book this. Look at me. And I was like, let's just have fun with it, you know? And I did. And I had a lot of fun with both of them and managed to book both of them, which is still crazy, but very fun.
Where do you come from in that? Because I think so many actors can really benefit from this. They get the audition and that voice, right, pops
Sure.
in their head. Why the hell did I get this? This makes no sense.
Yeah.
So where do you kind of do you have like a process with that? Like that goes beyond then like, I'm going to have fun with this, right? But you get the drug dealer and I guess the Ozark one, because that was the first one, right? And you're like, what the hell, right? Oh, I'm the drug dealer in Ozark. This makes no sense, but okay.
Okay.
Like what do you do? Like,
Yeah. First of all, I love when I get auditions where I'm like, I am not this at all. Like sometimes I'm sure you've gotten these too, where you're like, oh, the character in the script is like a 60-year-old Italian woman. And you're like, I'm none of those.
Yeah.
So let's have fun with it. Because sometimes casting directors they'll make you their wild card,
The
which
wild card.
I love being
The best, yes.
love being a wild card, baby, because then you get to do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Because like you definitely don't fit the role anyway, so it's like really, really have fun with it. Not like go crazy and like over the top, but like you get to absolutely do it your own way. But I enjoy getting ones where I'm like, really, I got submitted for this? That's crazy. Because then, like obviously I don't deal drugs in real life. I want to be clear on that. But
Or does he?
or do I? I don't know. Check out my number below. Jesse, go ahead and insert that right there. It's my second line. But like what every role, Ryan Gosling has a really, really good quote of this, right? Where he's talking about acting and he says like every role I do is different pieces of myself that I'm able to emphasize. I'm paraphrasing. But essentially he emphasizes different pieces of himself for different parts. And I think that's true for every role we do, right? Because that's what we want to see more than anything is you. Unless I'm watching like some really over the top sketch comedy where you can really put on like a crazy character, sure. But what I want to see on camera and what all of us want to see is someone being themselves. And so what's my version of a drug dealer? Like maybe I'm not the version of a drug dealer who maybe I sell a certain type of drug, or maybe my version is like the guy, like I realize I can, as essence wise, maybe feel or look more put together. I'm not, I'm an absolute mess. And, but for a drug dealer, maybe it's like, oh, that idea of like, oh, he's really put together, but he has lost it, right? He's lost everything. Things went south. His family fell apart, whatever it is. Yeah, he has no choice. Like this is his final option kind of thing. It's like, but in Ozark, like I was friendly, you know what I mean? Like I was kind of friendly. And I think that was part of it too. It's like, I'm not like, I'm me and I'm selling drugs. It was like, yeah, I mean, like my version of that is like, hey, you need something. I also need something. Let's make a deal.
Right. But what's so great? Because if you like all of us right now, all the listeners, like drug dealer, what's that look like?
Yeah.
Everyone is going to a specific type of drug dealer.
Sure.
And like, that's not you. And everyone's going to act that. And in that case, it was wrong. Like, that's not what they wanted.
Yeah.
And you being you is like, what was the biggest superpower to enable you to make sure that you got that booking?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting calling it a superpower too, because I think it is, and like it's a thing I'm constantly working on for myself, is how do I show up as me in any given thing? Because we do it all the time, right? We see a script, we see sides, and we're like, what do they want? How do I do and become what they want? Versus like, how do I be me in these given circumstances? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Even if I'm not a drug dealer, I'm not a lawyer in real life, except for that one time. No, I've never practiced law. I've never been a mechanic. I've never, all these things that we read for
just
or played.
Play one on TV.
Yeah, just play one on TV. My dad and I used to have a joke back in the day. It's not a unique joke, but it was like the joke of like, I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV. And then I happened to book a role on The Resident where I played a doctor in a few episodes.
And you were like, yes.
Yeah, I know. I was like, hey, Dad, I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV. And he lost it. It's very funny.
Yes.
So we haven't maybe actually done these things in real life, but it's like, what's my version of a lawyer and what's my version of a mechanic? And there isn't a right way to do anything. Anyone who tells you there is lying or selling something or both. Sometimes both.
Do you, how do you, I feel like sometimes I'll look back at some of my auditions and I'm like, I totally was playing the lawyer.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Do you have a technique on not playing the lawyer and bringing you?
I really like when doing auditions, like especially if I'm having trouble like really getting into it, playing the total opposite just to see what happens.
Yeah.
So if I'm reading for a lawyer, there's the like I'm the Law and Order like tough on crime guy or whatever. I don't know. What if I did this? What if I did a version where he's a total bro? Just to see what happens. What do we find? Like, oh, suddenly I'm connecting with the jury more because like I'm just like, what's up, dude? we hate crime, bro. And it's like, oh, there's something really valuable there of like, oh, I'm connecting with the jury. I missed that the first time.
Right.
Because I was so focused on like
The law.
being the law.
Yeah.
And so I love doing the opposite. And somewhat similarly, you can reverse it where you're not reading the part. You have your reader read the part just to hear it out loud. Because sometimes we'll see things in it that we totally miss because we were so focused on playing to a type instead of being ourselves in a moment,
Yeah, so good. So, I mean, I feel like this continues to get brought up about how you got to bring yourself to it, but I don't know. I feel like it's been illustrated really, really well in this conversation so far. So I appreciate you for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess going back to improv and sketch and transitioning a little bit into commercials, how much does that help into the commercial world? Because you book commercials too. I feel like anytime I'm like, I was in first refusal, didn't get it. I'm like, it's freaking Chris Mayers.
It's okay. I feel the same when I lose it. I'm like, it's Jesse Malinowski.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think improv, again, being a valuable just life tool in general for improv, super valuable for commercials. My gosh. Like, I'm sure you've had this happen. I love when you do a commercial audition, maybe you get a call back and you improvise something, right? Whether a button or in the middle of the scene, you don't get the role, but then you see the commercial later and the thing you said is now in the commercial and you're like, huh.
Yeah.
I should be a writer.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get a writer credit.
I know. But I think that it's super valuable being able to improvise. I did this commercial. It was this year, right? It was early this year. It was for this like high-speed internet company, whatever. And I played a cop, right? Who like shows up in the middle of a living room on a motorcycle, essentially saying like, you're going too fast, on the internet.
Yes.
Super fun spot. Crazy to be on a motorcycle in the middle of a living room. It was so heavy. It was like a 70s motorcycle that weighs like 2,500 pounds or whatever. I was like, this is terrifying, but you got to sell it, right? But we did that so many times, right? You're going to do so many takes. And that's okay, right? That's almost never has anything to do with your performance. It's usually camera or lights or you have a moving motorcycle or whatever. And everyone's doing an incredible job. It's like you're trying to capture that magic, where everything works perfectly all together, right? And so they wanted me to improvise parts of that scene, and we did like I don't even know how many takes of like the one wide shot, and like. I'm so thankful. They really wanted, they were like, make it different every time. And so man. I loved that though. It was so much fun to get to play. Like, you can come with some ideas of like, oh, here's how I'll button the scene or whatever. But there's something so juicy and wonderful of like, oh, I don't have an idea for this. We're just going to see what comes out of my mouth. And like sometimes you're like, well, that didn't work. And then sometimes it's like magic, where you're like, oh, that's so fun. But as a skill, the ability to like think on your feet, I think is really, really valuable. I did a movie called The Beanie Bubble, which was this like Beanie Baby movie with Zach Galifianakis. Really great movie, actually. I thought it turned out great. I was at they wanted to do this very long oneer, right? It was like it was like 5 or 6 minute oneer where he's walking through an office talking with people, right? In my role, I step up and I talk to Zach Galifianakis at the very end of this oneer, right?
You were like, I can mess this up.
Yeah. And I was like, right before it would roll, I'd be like, don't mess this up, because it's a lot of resetting if I mess this up.
God.
People and props and all this stuff that would have to get reset. And we spent all day shooting this one thing, but they were very pro improv. They wanted me to, and Zach Galifianakis is like an incredible comedian and improviser, right? And so it's fun watching back what made it into the final cut. I think it was on Apple TV, and I think they wanted coverage where they would punch in on each, actor individually in case they needed to cut to it, right? But I could tell the directors very much wanted it to be this oneer, and thank goodness they went with it because it's so good, this oneer. And at the end, there's that moment when I'm talking to Zach Galifianakis and his character. I say something and his character like very clearly hates me in this moment, right? And it was so fun getting to play with him. But I do think improv gives you a lot of confidence that like, hey, I'm here and I'm present and I'm able to be with you no matter what happens, right? Because at the tail end of this 5 minute oneer, if something goes a little wrong, like go with it. You know
Have
what I
to.
mean? You have to. If the camera's not in exactly the right place, or someone says the line a little different, or if I accidentally say the line a little different, or who cares if I say the line a little different? It doesn't matter, And then to be able to go with that and to say yes and to it, and then play is so valuable. And I think it really is rewarding as an actor. It's because it's just fun. But I think it also shows to producers, to directors, like, oh, this person, we can trust them. Because we can trust them that no matter what happens, they're here and they're present and they're ready to play. Because, we'll see actors sometimes who will, I've seen actors call cut before.
Oh my God.
Which I'm like, oh my God. Where they're like, that didn't go how it was supposed to. And I was like, all right, hey, that's okay. If that's your journey, great. I love that journey for you. But I think it's really valuable because time is money and producers see it that way, of course. And so your ability to roll with anything is so valuable. And I think improv training is huge for that.
Yeah, sometimes in class we'll have actors, like maybe like live Zoom or whatever, or in person. I feel like this happens a lot in person. Is they'll like mess up a line and they'll be like, "Can I do it again?" And I completely straight face go, "No."
I love that
because I'm like, don't cut yourself. Don't like. And and every time they're like, "What? Oh, and then we just stare at them and wait, like figure it out.
I love that.
Because it's so important. And that's a bad habit, right?
Yeah.
Like that might be a go-to. Like, can we just start over? Terrible habit. Don't water that garden.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got to just push through. Even if you're like, this is going to be terrible. I know it. I got to do it again. But like still get to the end.
Yeah. Yeah. I might restart if it's in like the first 2 lines. I might start over. But if you're like halfway through the scene, like, no, dude.
Yeah.
Buckle down. We're in this for the ride. You know what I mean?
And if you're doing an audition, we were talking about like bringing yourself, having these like authentic moments. Like you almost want to welcome the moment of you messing up a line because guess what? Like that's authentic.
It's
like
the
you
best.
being like, I don't know what the line is, but like I don't necessarily know what I'm going to say next. I'm figuring it out. You're figuring it out. And if we stumble on a line, we stumble on a line. It's like that, like you almost want to welcome those moments because again, like that 100%, at least that one moment will be real.
It's so real.
Yep.
And I've heard it from almost every casting director who's like, oh, we sort of love when you make a mistake because it's so real. Erica Bream actually was talking about it recently on a thing. She's a wonderful casting director. And she was talking about like when I hear a mistake, I like perk up because I'm like, oh,
what's about to happen?
What's about to happen?
Yes.
I'm like leaning forward and this is such a real moment. What's about to happen? And yeah, we do that to ourselves, right? Where we expect perfection from ourselves for some reason. And like perfect, first of all, doesn't even exist.
No.
It never has. And so for us to chase it is like a fruitless endeavor to begin with. But, the saying, don't let perfection be the enemy of good, right? Or great. And I think that's true. Like we can chase perfection in a way that crushes all soul out of anything, like any art is not going to be perfect. And that's wonderful. Like it's the little mistakes that like are so interesting. And they're not even mistakes. I shouldn't even call them mistakes. It's the human moments that are so real and so wonderful. And I'm not like trying to like say the words wrong, but if it happens, I sort of love it, know, because it is like, oh, great. When I watch it back, I'm like, yeah, real moment, boom. I actually have at least one in my audition. Like you said, it's like at least one of these is a real moment. And I love that, the ability to push through. So I'm glad you tell them to keep going.
Yeah. So the next thing, Chris, is like, should we be messing up on purpose?
Yes, absolutely.
How do we mess up on purpose?
I like to do a different script. I like to just start doing Shakespeare in the middle.
Yeah.
No, obviously don't mess up on purpose, but don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to quote unquote fail. Again, it is not actually failure, but it feels like it in the moment where I have failed. I am a failure. And that's your brain lying to you again.
The freaking brain.
The brain.
Voice.
That freaking brain. It's a filthy liar. And it's very powerful, the brain.
Yeah.
It's a little bully. Because here's the thing. our brain will say the worst things to us that if you heard someone else say to a friend,
oh my God,
you would be like, get out of my house.
Dude, yeah.
You are never invited here again.
Yeah, you'd be like, why do you hang out with that
why
dude?
are you friends with him?
Get
They're
him
like,
out
I
of
don't
here.
know. He lives in my body. And you're like, okay. But like we let our brains do that, you know, we say the worst things to ourselves. And it's, you know, every day we have to remind ourselves, I am not what my brain says I am. And my worth is not found in anything material. You know, my worth is not found in if I booked a thing. You know, if I booked this job, I'll finally be worth it, Dad. But no, but that's not true. First of all, like no material success is ever going to define you as a person and say like, yeah, you're finally good enough. We have to do that for ourselves.
100%. And what's even more interesting about the destination not being the thing is like when I found this with me, and I'm sure that you'll agree that you never talk about like the booking. You talk about the struggles to get there. You know what I mean? You talk about the path and the journey, not the finally getting there. You know, there might be maybe an element of like, and then I finally got it, but the real story comes in you working for it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it all comes from your own self-belief so much.
Yeah. And I think if you're able to bring like the idea of being yourself on camera it's so hard. It's like impossible, right? It's when you hear stories about like
impossible just spells I'm possible.
Hey, you just gotta drop a little apostrophe in there. Like you hear stories about Jennifer Lawrence, right? Who was sort of discovered, I believe, sort of just like in New York, which what a crazy thing. You're walking around with your family and you're like 14 and some dude's like, hey, you want to come audition? You're like, it's madness, right? It's so weird. But like something along those lines happened. I don't remember the exact details. And then she, you know, I'm sure obviously she has studied a lot and she has acting coaches, whatever now. I don't think she had really acting training at the time, but she was so natural on camera. That is very right. Well, first of all, yeah. But that's so rare to find that someone just like shows up and is totally able to be present in themselves on camera because it's really hard.
Yeah.
You know, you think you see it, right? When you go home for a holiday, if someone's like filming something, you see a family member, suddenly a camera's on them and they're like, I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't know what to do with my hands either, Grandpa. And it's like, but we all change when something's recording, right? And I started back in college. I sort of stumbled into acting. I was studying graphic design at the time, and that's what my degree was in, graphic design. I got ended up getting a minor in acting, and I sort of stumbled into it through. It's a long story, but you know, some friends, yada yada. Those very first short films I did, the student films I did, you know, I mean, there's parts of it I'll look back and be like, yikes, very cringeworthy. But there's like parts of it that are like, that's pretty good actually, because I didn't know any better. You know what I mean? It's like as you start to learn, sometimes you get really self-conscious. It's that oh, I forget the name of it. The minor Beit-Off. It's something like that. Of like, it's like the more you know, the worse you think you are because you know what you're missing. You know what I mean? And then eventually it comes back around. So your like knowledge and skill actually like meet up again. But there's like a weird valley where it's like you're actually better than you think you are, but you think you're bad because you can see what could be sort of thing.
Oh, yeah.
I'll look it up later. But that idea when you don't know anything, you're sometimes like you think you're better than you are, but in acting, sometimes not knowing anything, you're like, oh, I don't know any better, so I guess I'll just do this thing.
They're like, just walk over there and say the line. You're like, all right,
okay, sure.
And they're like, brilliant.
Yeah, right. And then
like,
later
I didn't do anything.
I know exactly. It's so funny whenever you hear that. I remember talking to family about that once, of like the idea of not doing anything on camera. Gosh, what were we watching? It was something on HBO, and I was like, we had been talking about acting stuff, and I was like, see, they're not doing anything, and it's amazing. And like, what do you mean they're not doing anything? I was like, they're not adding anything. They're just being. You know what I mean? It's like they were in the middle of something, and then someone would just very secretly was like, hey, record this real quick. And then they just kept being. You know, they existed before it rolled and they existed after it rolled. And I was like, man, that's the dream, to get there, you know, to effortlessly switch into that.
But. Going back to, because I just know you're going to have something good here. Back to some of the commercial stuff.
Sure.
I think some actors struggle with I guess I'll say like the directions, like because we're self-taping, you know, and we're like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? What do you have a process with that? How do you like figure out what to do and have fun doing it? Have like the confidence in doing it when you're like, I guess I'm supposed to do this. What am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to just open the box and look at the faucet?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Oh, you got that audition too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if sometimes you'll get from commercial agencies or whatever, you're getting these auditions that they ask you to make a little short film, which is very fun, where it's like, yeah, I remember getting one that was like specifically requested you film this in your kitchen and show yourself cooking. And I was
Oh my God, I remember that one.
Like, I mean, I guess, okay, I can do it. It's like, I have to move a bunch of stuff, but
You know, when
I
I
can do
got
it.
that though, I was like, at first I got so angry. I was like, this is so dumb. And then
right.
I thought, you know what? I got to make breakfast anyway.
Exactly.
You're just going to see me make breakfast.
I made lunch.
You're just going to see me make breakfast.
Yeah, but that's the art of it, is how do I make this fun?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because like there might be that initial, again, we hear our first emotional response is, I'm so mad that they're asking me to do this.
Yep.
And then how do we then react to it? What do we do with that
full
feeling?
circle.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because how do I make this fun? Right? Because I'm going to do it. If I have to do this, I could choose to be miserable while doing this, right?
Why?
What? How much fun is that to just groan and groan? None. It's awful, right? You feel awful, and the work isn't very good. You know, it comes across like immediately, this guy hates this. It's funny watching. There are, you know, not saying I'm perfect at doing that. There's plenty of auditions. I'll look back and be like, oh, I look not happy to be doing this, right? But that's valuable to be able to look back and say, hey, you can tell I wasn't into this because I didn't want to do it because I got it. I got angry that I had to do this little short film. And then I didn't take a moment to say, hey, let's make it fun though. But to go back to the actual question, I think stripping away, because you'll get 1,000 directions, right? There's sometimes you'll get like 2 pages of like text saying like, here's what we want you to do for this. The big thing is picking out for yourself really just the important beats of this story, because any commercial is going to be telling a story, right? It's not that much different than TV and film. Like, you know, the tone of it might be more heightened. A lot of commercials are really just like very natural though these days. And those are the hardest ones sometimes. But to break it down into the major components. So if you get like 2 pages of here's all the directions, like we want you to step outside and say hello to your neighbor, and then you close the door and you pick up the package and you go inside and you open the box and pull out some like new present. And oh my gosh, what a cool thing I just got. And then you put it back in, seal it back up and ship it back. You're like, what am I supposed to do with this, right? If you take those moments to say like, okay, I open a door. In the first moment, I say hi to my neighbor. Great, I can connect with someone. That's perfect. You know, the actual like action of opening a door, like gesture at it, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't look exactly like a door opening. But the big thing is the connection. That's the big thing to me for commercials, is how do I connect, especially if there's someone in the scene. It gets harder if you're just the only person, but how do I connect with the person I'm talking to or present with, you know? And if it is me opening a box, if I'm looking at a faucet or I'm looking at a new thing I just got shipped or whatever, what does it mean to me? Because there's ultimately anything we're doing is going to involve other people, right? And it's going to mean something to you. And so if I'm pulling out something I ordered off Amazon or whatever, what does it mean to me? Is it for another person? Is it because I thought of someone when I ordered this? Like, not to say like, what's my, 18-minute backstory, but like, what does it mean to me? And so those are the big beats, is how do I connect with people and how do I connect with whatever the product is. And you got to sell the product with commercials. The product is the star. You're not the star unless you're Ryan Reynolds selling something. But the product ultimately is the star. And so how do I connect with that and make that a positive experience, right? And so breaking all those actions down into like, try not to do like 3 to 5 specific beats. It might say 1,000 things you have to do. Most of them don't matter because you're just standing in a room, right? Like they know you can't literally do all these things. Break it down in those very specific actions and keep them so small. A little door, I'll use it. I have like an apple box I use for everything. If I'm opening a door, I'll just like grab the edge of the apple box and just whoop, And it's like, yeah, it feels like a door opened and it looks like a door opened and it's so tiny. It's such a tiny movement, but it's so specific. And so to choose those beats, make them specific and make them connected to people and to something that means something, I think is huge.
Man, I cannot agree more with the subtlety is like so important. And it's like, I mean, it's what we just talked about is like, just walk over there and say that line. You're like, I didn't do anything. Like, it's kind of a similar thing. But yeah, like those little movements, that little physicality, like opening a door or whatever, it does help a lot. And you mentioned selling the product, like the product being the hero. One thing that I also like to think of, and when it comes to, I think, some of the beats or moments that you're talking about, is like you have to imagine that this product, like it changes your life. You know what I mean? Like a Swiffer is not a mop. It's actually like gives you more time and it makes your like house better and your family happier and like all that stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and if you can think about it in that, I think it helps you discover those like moments even easier or better.
Yeah. And, you know, you hear some actors who are like, I don't do commercials. And it's like, all right, hey, man, good for you. That's totally fine if that's what you want. And I totally get it because, you know, selling a product is like, I can understand why someone wouldn't want to. And do pay pretty well. And so, depending, sometimes they don't, but they can pay pretty well. But I find it fun because it is like a lot of the time it is like a little sketch. You know, like a lot of the time they're, you know, even if it is one of those very grounded and real ones, it's still like a little short film that you get to be a part of. And I think that part's like really fun, actually, even if you are at the end selling a car or whatever.
Right.
It's very fun to have that moment.
Candace has also been like, I love commercials because she's like, I don't know why, but like there's no stress.
Yeah.
But you're on like a film set. There's like 100 people. They're like, you got to move quickly. You got to, and like you're just doing your scene and that's it. And like the commercial is just like more laid back.
It's like a little, it's a little looser a lot of the time. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So less stressful if you're someone that gets stressed.
Do commercials.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Well, Mr. Chris Mayers, I feel like we could just keep talking for a long, long time. I've enjoyed this so much.
That's
but
great.
I do think we got to get to our spotlight sign off.
Yeah.
So
Spotlight.
5 questions and strong.
Okay.
Number one. What's something you're super grateful for today?
Ooh, what am I grateful for today? This cappuccino is delicious. No, I think a big thing is my health. Like I'm so thankful I haven't had like, you know, huge major health issues over the years. But, you know, as we get older, our bodies start to hurt more. And like I've had some, you know, stuff with like bones and muscles and stuff over the years. And like in this moment, I feel great. And I got to work out today, this morning before coming over here. That's why I'm so swole. And, but
I mean, you're popping out of that shirt.
Thank you so much. I got this from set, actually.
Nice.
Don't you love that? When they're like, hey, do you want this shirt? And I was like, absolutely.
Sometimes I'll say, can I have this shirt?
Sometimes I'll just leave in it. Don't do that. But I got to work out today and like nothing really hurt today. And so just being able to be present in my body and like if I hurt on a given day, that's not a bad thing. It's still grateful for this body. We get to move around this life in, right?
Yeah, I love that because those are things that it's so easy to just like take for granted. And but I have also been, interestingly enough, really been taking note, and Candy and I talked about this the other day when we turned like 31. We both were like, oh my God, my body, right? And we've like made changes with our health, and I'm like, now I feel younger than I did when I was actually younger, and I feel like, I know what you mean because I've been thinking the same thing. Like, I just feel good, you know, like my body feels good, and
it's because you stopped doing cocaine.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. He's never done cocaine.
Or
no.
Is he not a drug dealer?
Call me. Put the number right there.
Yep.
Second line. No, but I know what you mean of like taking care of yourself as you get older. Because when you're like 25, you're like, I'm gonna live forever, and so you're like, I don't care.
But then when you're 30, you're like, oh shit,
oh no, I'm dying. One breath at a time. But taking care of our body, because I feel the same. Like I do think I'm in like. I feel better than I did when I was like 27, you know, when I was sleeping 3 hours a night and it was like you were doing whatever. But it's important to take care of this body because like hopefully we'll have it for another, you know, 50 years or whatever, you know?
At least.
At least, yeah. I am gonna live forever though.
I mean, by the time we get to that age, who knows where science is going to be?
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Can you imagine a world where everyone lived forever? It would be awful. I did watch Death Becomes Her yesterday. Watch that movie. It's amazing. But it's about these like people who are like immortal now. And I did have that thought of like, that would be a nightmare. Immortality sounds awful. But
it's interesting because like we wouldn't want to die. However, yeah, if you think about just going forever, like there is like a I'm tired.
yeah.
I'm tired.
I'm tired, dude. I'm just tired.
Yeah.
Can I sleep?
How many times can I see the world?
I know.
And
I
then
know.
you're just like, I missed that moment, but there's
Yeah.
tomorrow. You
But
just keep saying that.
Yeah, but not to be like too morbid, but there's something valuable about knowing, because like I don't think I'm scared of death. Sorry, this is getting really morbid.
We've
but
taken
in
a
the
turn.
sense, but in the sense of like, I think there's something valuable about knowing that, like, you know, we all have it does end eventually,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, enjoy the ride, be present, like care about the things you do care about. And that's great. That's wonderful. Like what you like. Sometimes you hear people who are like, oh my God, you like that thing. And I'm like, just let people like things. Just let people have a little bit of joy, you know? And I think that it's really valuable to live in the moment and I know you talk about gratitude a lot. I love gratitude, man. If your brain will lie to you, and the way to combat that brain is to tell it, hey, you know what I'm really thankful for?
Yes.
All this very specific stuff.
It does work. Yep.
And so every day to be able to be grateful that, hey, I'm here, man. I woke up another day and we're doing it.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Well, in that question one,
Question
if you got
one.
nothing else, no, you're gonna die.
Yeah. If there's nothing else you take from this, just remember, one day you're gonna die. Kids listen to this, right?
Question number two. Question number two is there a book, TV show, or film that changed the trajectory of your life?
Love this. Yeah. So I love hearing, I think every actor has a story of like a movie or TV show that they were like, yeah, this is it. This is the one that convinced me I want to be an actor, right? And for me, it was, of all things, The Social Network. I love that movie.
It's so good. I watched it just the other day.
Dude, it holds up. It's still
so good.
very, very good. And I remember that was back when I was in college. Again, I was studying graphic design. I had done like a short film, I think, and I was trying to figure out like, I loved doing that. What am I supposed to do with this feeling now? And I had talked to one of the professors, and she gave me some like really nice pointers about like acting and stuff like that. And so I had started taking classes, and then I remember watching this film, and I was like, oh, I want to do that. Because like the acting in that movie, speaking of like doing nothing, fascinating. Let's pull that back because I am burping. This cappuccino went right into the gullet. I love The Social Network because you see these actors who they're really not doing that much, but they're bringing so much of themselves to it. And there's all these stories about David Fincher and how many takes he'll do and all that stuff. And like Aaron Sorkin wrote the script for that. And his scripts are like 3 times the length they're normally supposed to be for a given like runtime or whatever, because it's so many words and you just talk really fast. But I was like, that's so amazing. And it really, I don't know, there was something about that film that just really affected me. And I was like, yes, I absolutely want to be an actor. And if I will say this, that if I ever got the chance to even say one line in like a David Fincher or Aaron Sorkin project, I would be like, hell yeah. You know what I mean? I would be like, this is like the dream, baby. But I love that movie. And if you haven't seen it, check it out.
So good.
Yeah.
It's so good. What is something within your daily routine that you really cherish?
I love coffee. Thank you for the cappuccino. But there is something really nice about when you first wake up, you get a little cup of coffee. And I just moved to a place, actually, it's not too far from here. And there's a balcony out the back, and we just have trees. And I just love stepping out there with a little cup of coffee and just looking into nature.
Yeah.
And it's the best, man. It's like, just take a big, deep breath of that air. And you're just like, man, we're alive today, man.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Do you look for something you haven't noticed before?
Ooh. No, but I love that. I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
I'm going to try that. Look for something new.
Yep, exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
tomorrow morning. Can't wait to wake up tomorrow.
All right. Awesome. Question number 4 is, what's something you're currently trying to improve in your life?
Yeah. Great question. Thank you. Because I'm lacking in a lot of areas. I think a huge thing is being present in my own body. I think it's really easy to get caught up in looking to the future or looking to the past. And ruminating on those things, right? Whether it's like, oh, I made all these mistakes in the past and they haunt me now. Not that like we can't learn from those things, but sometimes you'll have those, right? You're like trying to go to bed and you're like, I said this stupid thing and it like won't let go. Or looking for the future. It's like, oh, here's the things I want. And here's the things I wish I was doing right now. And this is the type of person I wish I was. And taking that moment to be like, all right, where am I right now? And who am I right now? And how do I live in this moment? It's like we're so addicted. We're all so addicted to our phones and like, you know what I mean? And the ability to just put that down and just say, hey, I am here no matter what it is. I'm standing on my back porch looking at the woods, trying to find something new. Or I'm like hanging out with a friend, like just be present and be there with them, And it's like a daily struggle to figure out how to be in the now, And
Yep.
it's something I'm constantly working on.
I like that. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about doing this podcast is that I'm like, we're phone on do not disturb, and for an hour or more, we're like just present and so focused on each other. And I didn't expect that when I was doing it.
Yeah.
That I was like, oh wow, like we don't do this.
Right.
Right. There's always like a look at this on my phone, or oh, I got a text message, or I'm just checking my email, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's powerful. That's good. I think is there anything specific, like how are you holding yourself accountable to doing it or to growing in it?
Great question.
You're like, I haven't figured it out yet.
We're still working on it, baby.
But I'm gonna make it.
No, I love that. I love that. I do think something that is incredibly valuable. Did I say that word right? Let's take that back. Valuable is therapy. Try it. Hey, men, therapy. Think about it. Not that I had a therapist who told me once, I love the way he phrased it. He was like, yeah, if you had parents, you need therapy. And I'm like, yeah, it's true. Like, no matter how good, like my parents were wonderful. They certainly tried their best, but like, anybody grows up with some form of trauma, unfortunately. Like even with the best parents in the world, you'll still have traumatic experiences that you need to deal with as an adult, right? And to sort of, because like it's the stupid things, like someone, there's all these, like I can have very distinct memories of something a teacher said to me, or like maybe a parent said very like offhand, where it was like they said something about you and you felt that defined you as a person, right? And you think about it all the time, where like a teacher said you're stupid or you're bad at math or you're never going to amount to anything. Was I told that? Maybe. And
your brain definitely
well, my brain certainly does. No, I mean, I did have a teacher say that to me. And but it's like those things stick with us, right? And especially when we're children, stuff adults say about us, because we don't know any better, we're kids. We feel that is now who I am because you have told me who I am. And I think that therapy is really valuable in getting to, as an adult, define who you are yourself. That it is now devoid of what other people say about you, right? That you are getting to decide, how do I define my worth? It is no longer this person says it about me. And especially as an actor, my gosh, like the industry will tell you certain things all the time, right?
Yeah.
About whether you're worthy or about whether you're good, about, all about your body or your voice or your looks or whatever. And it will, other people and things will attempt to define you all the time. And the ability to say, no, I hear those voices and I reject them is really valuable. And I think that therapy has really helped me a lot in recognizing those things, to be able to say, okay, these are the voices I've heard all through these years. How do I then take those voices, like you said, turn them down? Because they're there and you're not going to make them like absolutely go away, but how do I turn them down? And then how do I turn up who I am in this moment? And how do I show up as who I am in this moment? And what does it even mean to be who I am? Because it's so easy to be defined by other people. And how do we define that for ourselves? So therapy, that's how you do it.
All right. I like it. And good for you. And I'll say congrats, you know, that you are discovering ways to improve, feel better, get better each and every day.
Each and every day.
All right. Last question.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh, I'm sad.
I know.
Last one.
I'm crying.
Well, no, you're not. I don't see you crying.
Inside.
Okay. Last question. We've gone over a bunch of stuff, but if you wanted to make sure the listeners got one thing for sure, what would you want them to get?
I would say that you are enough. I know it's a phrase that we probably hear a lot from different avenues, and there have been times in my life when I've thought, like, please stop saying that to me. I hear it, and it's, excuse my French, bullshit. I'm not enough. Look at me, I'm not enough. Are you kidding me? I'm a trash heap of a human. No, I'm not enough. Like, stop saying that. And it's fun when you feel that moment of saying, like, stop saying that. That's an interesting one to latch onto, right? Because when you bristle against that, there's a reason to be able to listen to that and say, why do I feel like I'm not enough? Because there's there's so many days when I wake up and I feel that I am not enough. And it's important to be able to stop and say, why do I feel that today? What am I feeling insecure about? What am I feeling self-conscious about? What voice am I listening to instead of the one in my own head? Or instead of my own personal voice? What voice am I hearing that's telling me who I am instead of my own voice telling me who I am? And take a moment to really take that in and just figure it out, you know? And every day is a struggle to tell myself I'm enough, but it is absolutely true. And that's what, and again, I know we talked a lot about non-acting stuff in this, but to come back to acting, it's so important to be yourself, you know, to be confident in yourself and to trust that you are enough. Speaking of commercials that have the non-speaking, very grounded and real, those are the hardest auditions in the world, right? Where it's like, hey, I'm just a dad enjoying a birthday party or whatever, right? No lines. You're just looking at a family that you love more than anything in the world. And that's the audition, right? You're like, that's so hard because we feel that we have to do more, right? Do that take. Start with that take. Do the oh my God, I love my family so much, you know, take where you talk a lot and it's really big and whatever. And then realize no, I can just stand there and I'm enough, you know? That's so valuable. It's so interesting. You are interesting. Jesse Malinowski is interesting. You watching and listening right now, you are so interesting. And that's what I love about people. And that's what each of us love seeing in other people, is them being themselves. So just remember that you're enough.
So good, Chris Mayers. Thank you so much, man. It was awesome having you. Everyone, if you enjoyed, send this off to a friend, comment, leave us a review. Chris Mayers, it really was wonderful. And I think for the listeners, I would like you to, in your brain voice, tell us all something positive. Give us the opposite of what the brain voice would actually say.
People love you. People care about you. You're a wonderful human being, just as you are this day. And I want you to look in the mirror and say to yourself, hey, good looking, you're enough.